This is PTV World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you are watching Faultlines. China has been one of the fastest growing economies for the last 25 years. The consistent economic growth has been propelled by manufacturing industry that has produced almost every possible consumer product and beaten the price of local products in almost every country. The great economic progress was at its peak until 2010, when Chinese GDP growth rate spiked to 14.5%. But then the economic progress started slowing down. China realized that it needs to create convenient access for its products to global markets. This gave birth to idea of Belt and Road Initiative, an ambitious and courageous project to establish a network of railway, road and ports to 65 countries in the world. A pertinent part of this largest project of human history is its southern subcomponent named China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a series of projects that will improve China's access to the energy suppliers as well as help Pakistan to establish its industrial infrastructure. But there is criticism on this project from the West. US and its ally India have been particularly skeptic and critic of this project, while Pakistan declares it to be the backbone of its economic and industrial future. Our team has prepared a package. Watch the package before I bring my first guest to the program.
China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a part of China's larger Belt and Road Initiative, which is spread across Asia and Europe. CPEC is a $64 billion project signed in 2014 and is a framework of roads, rail, and air transportation. This will enhance connectivity not only between China and Pakistan, but also regionally, including Afghanistan, Iran, Central Asian republics, and even India. With the country entering the second phase of CPEC that focuses on agriculture and mass industrialization, Pakistan has witnessed 70% rise in exports to China. In the second phase, science, technology, and tourism would also be given significance. This economic corridor is divided into 2 zones and consists of 9 special economic zones. CPEC opens new arenas for regional development, such as transportation infrastructure, energy hubs, trade and commerce connectivity, peace and development of the region, socio-economic development, industrial and financial cooperation, and tourism. Another significant aspect of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is to enhance regional security. Despite its potential regional benefits, India has been raising concerns over a part of CPEC that is built in Pakistan's Jammu and Kashmir and has allegedly carried out terrorist activities to hinder the progress of the project. Globally, many countries have shown interest to invest in the mega project. However, the United States has criticized the project publicly. Despite a growing rivalry, both the United States and China have shared interest in Pakistan, and cautious diplomatic cooperation rather than outright confrontation may yield more optimal outcomes for all the parties involved. Hence, the United States should welcome this project, since it's economically viable and contributes to Pakistan's economic growth and political stability, which is good not just for the region, but also for the entire world.
My first guest in the program is the resident editor of Pakistan Today, Mr. Mia Ebrar. Mia Ebrar is a well-read author and has been published in Pakistan and China. Ebrar, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Shabahat.
Ebrar, tell me, you have been published in Pakistan and I have seen your work being cited in various international journals as well regarding CPEC and BRI. What is your take or what is your view about BRI? How do you see this mega initiative?
Look, Belt and Road Initiative, in my view, is the Chinese recipe of integrating the world economies through road and sea links. There is a Chinese saying which goes, if you want to get rich, build a road. If you want to get richer, build a highway. If you want to get richest, go to the sea. Hence, China plans to connect and integrate the smaller and developing economies so as a multipolar world comes into being, where countries are interdependent and no one destabilizes the other. Under the Chinese plan, China, being the world engine of the growth, would be investing billions of dollars for infrastructure development through funding from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Silk Road Fund. The way China has moved into the conflict zones like Africa and Asia, has started developing infrastructure, has surprised the West. Now, this is the Chinese philosophy that they go and they invest rather than they giving loans to the developing countries. In the past, what we have seen is that the Western countries and the IMF and the World Bank and the ADB, they give loans to the developing countries, and unfortunately, the developing countries cannot build their infrastructure due to their weak links, their inability to develop, and these funds end up in the West again through corruption and through the numbered and overseas accounts. So what China does is that China doesn't give loans. They give loans to their own companies. Their companies go to these countries and they develop the infrastructure. And thus, after some time, the Chinese companies make some profits and then they hand over those projects to the host nations. So this is the best recipe, I suppose, for the developing world. And in the longer run, they can learn the infrastructure their own self, and they can then benefit from those infrastructure linkages which China has been building.
Ibrar, it is said often by the Western media as well as the Western academia has been extremely critic of this concept of economic colonialization. They say it is a debt trap extended to the poor countries who have no means to pay it back. And the terms and conditions of these loans are also very difficult for these countries. How do you see that?
Yes, that's why I have already, explained that Chinese model is not as such as is the World Bank and IMF thing. China doesn't give loans to those countries. China gives loans to their own companies. The Chinese companies go and develop, and when they make some profits, and after 20 or 15 years, they hand over those projects to the host nations. So the Chinese recipe is not like that they give loans to those countries. This is how the West has, stolen the resources of the developing countries, that they give loans, and these loans are, through illegal channels and the corruption money, they go against in the numbered and offshore accounts of the West. So the money goes back to the West, and the poor nations remain poor. China is not doing things like that. China is building infrastructures in the nations, and these companies on BOT basis, they earn some money and leave the project there. So this is altogether different.
Imran, the way BRI is proceeding to many other countries, there is a huge noise of human rights issues, particularly the Uyghur Muslim issues in China. It's now getting more widely published in the international media. We see many international media outlets now writing and filming more frequently about it. Do you see any correlation in the two?
Okay, Shiva, let me come back to your question about the colonialization. The problem is the West has colonialized, and it has colonialized not only Asia but also China itself. China itself a victim. So in China's past, 6,000 years written history, China has never colonized any country or state. China's influence is growing, and this is, disturbing the West. So the West is coming up with cooked stories of, human rights abuses or colonialization or things like that. Just because the West has, hegemony on Western media, and especially if you go to Google and, other applications, in the internet and the IT sector. The West has, this developed this algorithm thing, and they have. If you Google something, only the Western perspective come on Google, and the Chinese perspective is not there. That's why the West is trying to paint China as a colonializing emerging power. But this is not true. China, in its 6,000 years history, has never colonialized any nation. So this is absurd to talk about.
Ibrar, if these are the roadblocks that US, as you said, is trying to build, or as you said, West is trying to build to stop China from expanding or its influence over the other countries, how successful have these efforts been, in your opinion?
Shabbat, let me respond to your human rights abuses thing, which has been paddled by the Western media. Look, in China there are three types of Muslims living in China. One are Hui Muslims, the other are Uyghur Muslims, and the others are those who come from other countries. China has no problem with Hui Muslims and the other countries' Muslims. There are some problems with Uyghur Muslims because Uyghurs, the Tataris and Turks, they had invaded a part of China that is called Xinjiang now. In the past, it was used to call Xinjiang. So only there are problems in Xinjiang, but things are changing now. There is peace returning, terrorism has gone, and only some hue and cry the West is making is all about Xinjiang. But other Muslims, they are in huge numbers that are Hui Muslims and the other countries coming Muslims. And they have no problem with, Han Chinese. So this human rights thing is absurd because the West itself has invaded so many Muslim countries. We have seen that wherever the American and Allied forces went, they took death and destruction from Libya to Syria, from Iraq to Afghanistan. We have seen entire Middle East, Lebanon, Palestine, all destructed, and the West never talked about those killings of Muslims. Now they are just using this human rights issue as they did against Saddam Hussein.
But Ibrahim, how successful has this propaganda been? This is a very important question because we need to understand if the West has been successful in creating enough roadblocks for China.
Sorry, Shabbat, I couldn't hear you. Can you please repeat your question?
How successful have West been in creating these roadblocks, or how effective these roadblocks have been toward the development of BRI?
No, I don't think so, because actually this was Obama who in 2009 actually initiated its efforts to block China's rise. And if we go in 2009, Hillary Clinton had, coined this term of Asia pivot policy of the US. And initially they engaged India and Japan and South Korea to contain China. Then again in 2014, 2012, again the US coined this term, and this time around they tried to lure Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Maldives, and even Sri Lanka. The second bid was a bit serious, but what happened was that China won over all its, the US allies one by one, starting from Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Taiwan. China has won them over again, and China explained to them that China's plans are not against them, rather China is helping. And today we see that India has been encircled, and India's all neighbors, almost all the neighbors except for Bhutan, they are now hostile neighbors to India, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Nepal, whether it's Pakistan, whether it is Iran, whether it's Russia, all are supporting China, and the US efforts to contain China are fast losing its steam.
Thank you very much, Abrar. This was very insightful. We'll take you again in the next program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break here and we'll join back with the second segment of our program. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guests in studio for the second segment of the program are here with me. I have with me Dr. Talat Shabir. He is Director of Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. And I have Major General Inamul Haq, a famous defense analyst who is widely published in various newspapers. I welcome both of you to my program. Dr. Talat Sahab, starting from you. How do you see this great BRI initiative? It has been a new development. I mean, just in the last decade it started and it has become a buzzword for the entire world. How do you see that?
Right. When we look at Belt and Road Initiative that was initiated by China in 2013, it's called ambitious venture by President Xi Jinping when it started in 2013. You see, it's a gigantic work, gigantic idea by China, which as we speak has involved almost 2/3 of the world, and it has actually targeted 2/3 of the world economies also. So by it's quantum, we can realize that how big project it is and how it can create ripples across the world, and particularly for those who do not wish China to see rising and becoming a superpower that it is increasingly making its place too. There are two dimensions of Belt and Road Initiative. First dimension that it's from China, China's perspective of Belt and Road Initiative. China's perspective of Belt and Road Initiative is that China wants to share its excess wealth with the developed and the world also. And it talks of common future, it talks of common destiny, it talks of shared future. It's nice things. China talks about Belt and Road Initiative, and China is actually trying to prove that it is something that world should look at. As world should welcome it as part of a larger vision of the emerging world. Now, there's another perspective that is the world perspective. There are people who are engaging with China. There are people, there are countries, there are powers who are trying to contain China. Of course, for very political purposes that they have at their mind. So the world, as we speak, about 70 countries have become part of Belt and Road Initiative, and it's Western estimate that it is likely to be a project of $1.3 trillion. So it's a gigantic work. So there are countries who are engaging with China. They want to benefit from this project, and there are countries who are trying to contain China, who are trying to undermine this project. And why they want to contain? Because they think Western when we see Western perspective on Belt and Road Initiative, we find that West is wary of this project because West thinks this project is not economic. This is economic tool, but this is not an economic project for the betterment of the world. This is a kind of trap for the world, economic trap for the world. This is something that actually China aims at trying to expand its strategic motives. This will serve China's superpower ambition, maybe very aggressively. So there are two schools of thoughts have emerged on Belt and Road Initiative. One wants to benefit from Belt and Road Initiative, and one wants to contain Belt and Road Initiative for the purpose that it is going to increase China's political strategic power to a level. So that is the two perspectives.
General Sahab, this is two perspectives on BRI. Which one do you subscribe and why?
I think basically, if you look at the history of China, China has been saying two things loud and clear all along. China has been endeavoring for a harmonious world. And the second point about the Chinese history is that China has no history of colonialism. The only time it invaded a country outside its borders was Vietnam, some 100 years ago. That is it. Otherwise, China has no history of colonialism anywhere in the world. And if you add the third thing, the way they believe in life, the way they approach life, Confucianism. Confucianism also is amity, peace, brotherhood, love. So as far as I am concerned, I don't see any ill motives behind the Belt and Road Initiative, which somebody called the One Belt, One Road Initiative. BRI is actually the Chinese equivalent of OBOR in English. And as Dr. Talat has brought out, the total scale of the projects as of January 2019 is more than 800 large and small projects all over the world. So it's a big thing. Nothing of this scale has ever happened in the history of the world. We see parallels like US aid, UK aid or other small things, but something as big as BRI has never happened in the history of the mankind. At this point in time, probably it will be a little early to see the full ramifications of this particular project unfold. We'll have to wait for a little while.
Tell us about this CPEC that is a subsidiary or a project under the larger plan that we are discussing here. So there is an agreement that was signed between the two governments, and there is very little that have been spoken about it. There have been criticism on the agreement, its terms. Can you tell us just briefly about the agreement? Have you gone through the document?
Yes.
Did you see what is in there for the two nations? Is it unilaterally in favor of China, or is it a bilateral win-win situation for the two nations?
I think it is a win-win situation for both nations. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is the flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative. This is the proof of concept or a pilot project, as if we may call it. That is why it is very important for China more than it is for Pakistan to succeed. That we got to understand very clearly. The agreement was signed in 2015, not an agreement but an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the two countries in 2015, and it covered everything. It covered the whole of Pakistan and only western part of China. And it caters for something like 8 areas, from tourism to infrastructure development to transportation to energy to rail and road communication to industrial development. And a very major component of this particular CPEC is the social development. No other project internationally, whether it is an IMF project, whether it is a World Bank project, caters for the social development of an area, of a country, to the extent to which the CPEC is attentive.
Doctor, being a PhD scholar, you're writing very frequently on this issue. How do you see this overall plan? Because it is a unique thing for Pakistan. Nothing like that has happened before. So from the development perspective, where we have been taking grants and donations from rich organizations, now to a country helping Pakistan to build the infrastructure. How do you see that from the development perspective?
Right. I think this CPEC project is one historical opportunity for Pakistan. We must capitalize on it. We must consolidate gains that we have at the moment. When I look at CPEC, and I call it historical opportunity for Pakistan, you see, there's a lot of investment that has come to Pakistan, and we must take note of this, that this investment came in Pakistan when there was no other country in the world investing in Pakistan. This is the time of 2013, 2014, 2015 when we had problems like terrorism, we had instability, and it was not a very investment friendly country when it came. So the one that we must thank Chinese that they were sincere enough to
the environment was not very conducive.
Yes. For any investor, in any part of the world, he would look at the stability, look at the country first to invest. So China was the country which came to our help and started investing. One. Second, it's not only investment. I think CPEC is transfer a transition of a skill also that Chinese had obtained over a period of time. So there was, this development was wholesome. It was not only investment, it was Chinese industry coming here, it was Chinese skill coming here, it was Chinese expertise coming here, it was Chinese experience coming here. It was I think wholesome package that came with CPEC. So I think it's sometimes a little disappointment I have is that we need to take this opportunity as something very important, and we need to come up to the standard.
Dr. we are coming to the bottlenecks later. General Sahab, taking advantage of your presence, can you please apprise us or enlighten us on what the basic vision was for the people of Pakistan? We understand that China was trying to have access to this port to cut down the distance. It's been talked about more often. And how have we transformed this into long-term, short-term and mid-term pieces? Can you enlighten us on that?
As Dr. Talat has said very rightly, if we compare the inflow that is coming from China to the World Bank and the other institutions, they give you $700 to $800 billion, and that with a lot of conditionalities attached. With it. This project is worth, to this point, it may grow because the MOU says that every 2 years you have to review the projects and increase the portfolio. The portfolio is $50 billion to this point in time.
50 billion.
$50 billion, up to $50 billion. Out of that, $35 billion are for energy sector and $15 billion are for other sectors. Now, coming back to your question, how is it going to affect Pakistan or our economic outlook? The theme or the vision at the time of signing the MOU from the Pakistani side was to harness Pakistan's demographic and economic leverages in a way into this whole project so that it leads to industrial development in the country, because that is what we need basically. Industrial development will basically give a fillip, or I would say a boost to the Pakistani economy. So that is the thing. Another thing that we need to remember is that there is a vision for China, which was develop the western part of China. There is a vision for Pakistan, which I just mentioned, and there is a vision for regional countries. CPEC is not only Pakistan specific. CPEC at the end of the day aims at developing Central Asia and South Asian countries. That includes India also. We will talk about that later. So it is a very overarching initiative by the Chinese government. And if we follow the timelines, like in the initial document, the timelines was that up to year 2020, we had to resource mobilization. That was the time for the resource mobilization. And then 2025 was for some projects, and 2030 was the ultimate. The whole thing was to happen from 2017 to 2030. So as far as my reading is concerned, you're perfectly on time.
General Nam, for a country that is as massive as China with its industrial muscle, it is beating, as I said in my intro, every country in its own market with its price. Pakistan opening up its roads and giving a full access to the market, doesn't it have a hammering effect on our own manufacturing or our own industry? Or how do you see this going long term?
Well, as far as my view on this is concerned, we will talk about the debt trap a little later. But my view on this particular aspect is concerned, there are two things to it. One are the agents of change in place within China, and the other are the agents of change within the region. The Chinese merchandise at this point in time is inexpensive. But with the passage of time, the cost of living will improve, the cost of production will increase in China, so the Chinese merchandise will not remain as competitive regionally and globally. So that is one aspect which is going to help us in the long run. Number two, the Chinese involvement with our companies, there are a lot of companies in joint venture with the Chinese company at this point in time. So that technology transfer, that skill transfer is going to happen our own industry. Three, the Pakistani industry will also become more competitive to survive. So survival is something for which people do things, acquire knowledge, acquire technology. So these three things are going to go hand in hand. I don't feel this is going to have a very lasting negative implications for Pakistan.
Dr. What's your take on this debt trap theory that is being so vastly spoken about it's all over the media. It's as Mia Abrar said in the beginning, that since the West is holding the entire media and Google and everything that comes to social media, do you agree to what he just said, or do you have a different take on it?
I think when we listen to this threat trap theory, primarily it is boasted by the West. So in one of my interaction with a scholar from Sri Lanka, I asked how much literature is created on debt trap. He said almost nothing. So I think the countries, those who are being debt trapped, should worry more about it. One. Second, I think the very basis of loan, this loan thing, if you discuss with an economist, I'm not an economist, if you use your loans or money borrowed for productive purposes and you return, this is a global formula, by the way. So you will fall in debt trap if you don't use if you don't make productive use of loans. And if you make productive use of loan, not only you develop your own infrastructure, you develop your own industries, you develop your own institutions, infrastructure, you also return the loan. This is very simple. This is no country in the world gives you loan without any markup. No country will give you loan without any conditionalities. And if some conditionality gets into trap at some stage, so I think it's very natural. One. Second. Third is that in my opinion, I think this debt trap is a kind of ploy that is being used by the West. There will be some kind of trap. You can't ignore that altogether. There will be some kind of
Nothing
trap.
comes free.
Nothing comes free. But it's not going to be like you must have heard. The higher officials of Chinese telling us, okay, if you are not able to pay your loan, your capacity to repay loans by this date is not enough. We may extend, we may give some waiver to you. So there's I think there's a comfortable arrangements. And one good thing about Chinese is that Chinese, they understand our problems, they understand our limitations, they understand our economy, they understand our issues that so I think whether with regards to Pakistan, I don't foresee any debt trap coming soon.
Dr. Shab, in this region where we are sitting, we have two immediate neighborhoods. One is Iran and one is India. We know much about India, but how do you think Iran has reacted or responded to this project? There is a new initiative by the government of China also helping Iran to come out of its financial crisis. So how do you see this in the geopolitical settings of our country?
Yeah, like when we look at China-Iran deal, so there are two aspects to it. One is a political aspect, because Iran is under sanction. Iran is censured by many countries, many Western countries, in line with America. So there's going to be political advantage to Iran of this $400 billion deal that they have struck. Second is economic. $400 billion is a lot of amount. Maybe it is extended over next 25 years, but it's a lot of amount, and I think it will help Iran to address its economic woes that it faced in last couple of years. So Iran's situation economically and politically will improve. Regionally, I think, in my assessment, Pakistan will stand to benefit, because we fall between China and Iran. So in any case, I think we shall have some advantages with regard to energy. We will have certain advantages with regards to trade. And since we have two ports, adjoining two ports, Chabahar and Gwadar, I think this Iran-China deal will have very positive implications for Pakistan.
General Sahab, how India is responding to it? We understand Pakistan has given a complete dossier to United Nations about the involvement, and their arrested spy has very generously accepted the involvement of his government and his intelligence agency that he was working for. How do you see the security arrangement of this entire project in regards to what Pakistan is facing with regards to the Indian involvement?
Pakistan has taken very strong measures to protect the Chinese people and the Chinese investment in Pakistan. As far as the army is concerned, army has raised two divisions exclusively for the CPEC protection. One division is responsible for KP and Punjab, and one division is responsible for Sindh and Balochistan. These divisions protect the Chinese people and the Chinese projects in a round-the-clock manner.
For our comprehension, can you tell what is two divisions actually?
Two divisions will be approximately 25,000 people.
25,000.
Yeah.
Boots
If you include the ancillaries with it, the figure might go up to 35,000 people. Now, in addition to that, the security of the Chinese investment and people in Pakistan is an integrated approach, follows an integrated approach, whereas the military, the paramilitary forces like the Frontier Constabulary and the Frontier Corps and the local police and the intelligence services are integrated to provide a security. And this security is an end-to-end security. It starts the day they land at the airport, it ends the day they leave the airport after finishing the project. This is one aspect that we need to understand. The second thing is an initiative by the government of Punjab. The government of Punjab has created a new police for the protection of the CPEC and its project. It is a special CPEC police, which is called a special CPEC police. Now, coming out to some news in the media about attacks on the Chinese, we got to understand that there are at this point in time around 80,000 Chinese living in Pakistan. The number of people who are deployed on projects in Pakistan is 20 to 30,000 people. So if a Chinese is attacked in a market who does not belong to the projects, that is also somehow the other bundled up with the attack on the Chinese, and it is given out of proportion coverage in the media just to malign China. So I think if we see the history up to this point in time, I think it's a pretty good.
Doctor, what bottlenecks other than security were you mentioning with regards to CPEC?
I think first of all, when we want to take advantage of CPEC, first of all is since we are over with the first two components of CPEC, which was infrastructure and energy. So now we are in industrialization. The first bottleneck for industrialization phase is that we need to actually create a skilled labor in Pakistan that can actually participate in what we aim at industrialization phase. Second, you also mentioned about hammering effect for our local industries, our local infrastructure, our local institutions is that we need to go for joint ventures, and Chinese have agreed to this proposal that in the special economic zones we must have joint ventures with
local
manufacturers. When you have joint ventures, then your interests, your gains and losses, they have kind of equalizing effect. So we believe that if there's and I also wherever I go, I interact with Chinese. I think this Chinese must help us to develop kind of skilled manpower in Pakistan so that we can contribute as we want to. The third thing is that we are expecting a lot of employment generation from industrialization phase. So how will that employment generate if you're not skilled?
Dr. let's take a feeler from Balochistan. I have with me Iqbal Baloch, a journalist based in Balochistan from Quetta. Iqbal, how are you doing today, and welcome to the program.
Shabazz, thank you so much for having me on your show.
What is the feeler in Balochistan with regards to the CPEC project? What opportunities or what sentiment do you see in the people as the project progresses further in Balochistan?
Well, you see, Shabazz, indeed, CPEC is a great project for Pakistan because China wants to utilize the land route of Pakistan to reach the Arabian Sea through the and for trade purposes through Gwadar Port. And as we know that Gwadar Port is a natural DC port, and it is situated right at the Strait of Hormuz. And world's 1/5 oil traverses right in front of Gwadar Port, and it is one of the strategic locations of the world. So, CPEC indeed is going to be a game changer for Pakistan, and not just for Pakistan, for the entire region. But you see, the thing is, when it was first launched in 2013, we had very high hopes. People of Balochistan had very high hopes, and the high hopes were because, they thought that since their city, their province was the centerpiece of the CPEC project, so now after years of, poverty, and low economic, poor economic situation in the province, they had some hope that they're going to see some progress and development. But it
Iqbal,
has
are
been
there
so
any
many
local
years.
apprehensions by the people of Balochistan as the project proceeds further?
Well, because so far, if you would look at it, there is a lack of transparency in the CPEC project. How many projects would be earmarked for Balochistan, and how many mega projects are would be from other provinces? So far, we have seen that only 4% of the entire CPEC project will be implemented for Balochistan, which is not very high. And and there are two projects, and so far in Balochistan are under progress. One is the Gwadar Port, and the other one is the Gwadar Port and Happo China coal fire plants. So so people are saying that they don't see on ground many development when it comes to CPEC project, whereas mega projects are being announced in other provinces. So they have this reservation, that a lot of political voices in Balochistan. They say had Gwadar not been had Gwadar not been the part of CPEC project, probably the CPEC project wouldn't have come to Pakistan. So and they need to see more development in Balochistan. And the other thing is that we have seen in the past, that some vocational trainings had started during Parvez Musharraf's tenure. But that, practice has been stopped. And, we don't see such vocational trainings, for the local people of Gwadar in particular and Balochistan in general.
Thank you very much, Iqbal. Thank you very much, Iqbal, for being on my show. Dr. Shab, can you quickly respond to what he just said? These are very pertinent points.
Yes, I think as far as my information is, there are vocational training centers being established in Balochistan. And one important thing is that we understand, China also understands this. Balochistan is very, very important for the success of CPEC, because the whole of, one CPEC terminates at Gwadar in Balochistan. And we have a lot of hopes with development. It is not possible, the CPEC is not possible without Balochistan. So the government of Pakistan as well as Chinese are concerned, and they know, they're alert to the important, to this fact that Balochistan is important. The important thing is, one more important thing is that skill development is very important, and particularly for the people of Balochistan, particularly with the people of Gwadar and the people living, with the areas that we want to develop in Balochistan. There are certain concerns that Balochistan, when they speak, they're right. But I think with the passage of time, all concern will be addressed, and at least official meetings or wherever I lay hand on some documents.
Jalal, your concluding comments on the conversation we had so far.
Yeah, can I just make some comments on the debt trap and the balance of payment?
Please.
At the time of signing the contract, there was a lot of homework done by both sides, and I was very impressed when I researched for this particular show. The peak outflow, whether the interest going out, the profits going out from Pakistan, 24-25 is estimated to be $4 billion, not more than that, and that is 24-25. At that time, it was envisaged that if our exports grow by 10%, and by the way, the 2017 export growth was 12%. So if our exports grow by 10%, we would be able to make up to $6 billion. So that would be somehow the other covered. In addition to that, if you control the power outages, you will earn another $7 billion. So there was no question of debt trap. Pakistan was supposed
thank you very much, Jalal Sahab. Ladies and gentlemen, CPEC is a humongous opportunity for Pakistan, and it is now up to our leadership and our government. How do we capitalize on this great initiative? We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.